Hello, Kate.
Hello.
Hello, Kate. Welcome to Weird Wonderful Wonders. And
Thank
we're
you.
recording this because I'm doing a special month in October called Orbtober, which is all about orbs.
hmm
And I know from talking to you before, because I was on your podcast, that you've got experience with orbs. And so I thought you'd be an ideal person to talk to. And also, you sometimes have orbs happening around you while you're online, don't you? So
I do. I do. I thought they'd disappeared. I've recently moved, and I did think they'd gone. I'd moved into a property that I didn't feel anything around, and I did a YouTube last Tuesday, and at the very end of it, the gentleman that we were interviewing said, "You do know that you have things flying around you, don't you?" And me,
yeah,
me and Neil Rushton were like, "Yeah, that happens. That happens."
is there? So if you'd just like to introduce yourself, because obviously people know you on your wonderful YouTube channel.
Mhm.
If you just want to sort of say a bit about what you do and who you are,
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
I mean that hat changes depending on where I'm at, really.
Mm,
So my name's Kate Ray. I am a paranormal investigator, and I see myself as an holistic paranormal investigator, where I try and encompass all high strangeness and weirdness, which covers a lot of what I do. I'm a regular writer for Haunted magazine. I usually write about fairy and the
mm.
fae. What else do I do? I've got YouTube, so myself and Neil Rushton sit down and chat to people about fairies on my YouTube channel. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
And I thank you. And I just saw an orb going up a couple of minutes ago up behind you from the lamp.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes I can actually see them with my eyes, and you'll see me tracking them, so I can see them real time. And sometimes I
Yeah.
can only see them on screen.
Right. So
Excuse me.
that's all right. Okay. Do you want to drink?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and
And I,
another. I actually
oh
saw
yeah,
that one.
that one went around. And
Yeah.
what do you think they are? The orbs in your house, what do you think they are?
So, from the parapsychology point of view, I'm inclined to say orbs of dust. And the majority of the time, um, when people show me pictures of orbs that they have, um, they can be debunked. They can be
Mm, mm,
debunked as either dust or particles, whether that be rain particles or damp in the air. There is, however, a difference, and I think the difference for me is when I see them whizzing around and I can actually see them not on
mm,
the screen but in front of me, and I know they're not an insect. There's one just gone up there which
mm,
I didn't
mm,
actually see that one. um, I don't know. I don't know whether it's sort of energies around, whether it's my energy that kind of puts it out, or in this particular circumstance, I'm not sure.
mm.
In other circumstances, I have varying different theories. You have theories of Will o' the Wisp. There's another one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
um, so
Mm,
orbs for me, when they are proper orbs, are visible to the
mm,
naked eye. They range in size from something that can be quite minute to something probably about football size.
mm,
And we have in folklore, in mythology, um, and historically, we have Will o' the Wisp, which are the lights that kind of guide people to marshlands and
mm,
drowned them.
mm.
That's one element of it. And I have encountered there was
Oh,
another one.
and another one, yeah. That's
um,
nice. Yeah.
I have encountered sort of the more solid, larger forms of orbs when I was a lot younger, and lived in a house that provided that experience, not to me, unfortunately, but
Mm.
to my brother. So I think there's a whole plethora of theories and ideas about what they may be. I've just seen another one.
Yeah.
Um,
They're really active, aren't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually when this happens, when I get a lot sort of flitting around, it means that we're going to have some kind of
Oh, look,
bad.
yeah,
Did you just
because
see another one?
one just went, whoa, off into the distance behind you. Yeah.
Usually when this happens, it means
Yeah.
that something technology-wise is going to go crashing down because um, I don't think I've ever done a podcast where we haven't had technological problems, and it usually happens
Hmm.
when this kind of builds up. So
Ah. Well, let's hope. Let's hope
yeah,
we get through. So, just going back to what you were saying, would you be able to share your brother's experience of what happened in the house?
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Hmm.
So we grew up from our mid sort of early teens, sort of, you know, as we were getting into the sort of 10, 11 years old, we moved house. That was a mirror image of the house next door, and that's important. So
Hmm.
there were two properties side by side that were a mirror image. And my brother had tentatively complained about lights in his bedroom when he was growing up. My dad
Hmm.
was a staunch skeptic to the point where we didn't talk about anything odd or anything weird because of that. And he kept on complaining about it. And I went on to babysit for my next door neighbour's children. I
Hmm.
was, you know, mid-teens at the time, and they were just next door, so I had any problems, and my parents were next door. And this all ties in, by the way, this all ties in.
Yeah.
So my next door neighbours had complained to my parents that I had been smoking in the property.
Hmm.
And I hadn't been smoking in the property. I did smoke craftily, but I used to go outside. But they would complain that they would come back and their bedroom would smell of cigarette smoke. And this then ensued a whole sort of slightly tipsy conversation between. I've just seen. You see that one there?
Oh, yeah. Sort of.
I can see that one.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Sorry.
Is that, where did that start? Did it start
I
in
think it
front of
was,
you?
yeah, about down here, I think, and went.
Oh gosh, I wonder what it is. Sorry, carry on with your story. I'll ask some more questions in a minute. Yeah. Mm.
Um, so a slightly tipsy conversation ensued between my parents and my next door neighbours about me possibly or not possibly smoking in their bedroom.
Mm.
And it came out, it transpired that the next door neighbours, the gentleman had grown up in that house. That was his family home, and they'd moved back into the property. And they'd been having some low-level paranormal activity, but again, they didn't speak of it. It wasn't something that was talked about. It was something that was brushed under the carpet. And part of this conversation led on to them talking about when he was a child growing up in that house that was a mirror image of our property.
Mm.
And I had never come across the concept of orbs until this point. And he said him and his brother, I think it was, would play with lights. So
Oh.
these lights were physical. And he said that they would appear in the back bedroom, which mirrored my brother's room. And they would appear in either ones, twos, or threes. And he said they became that used to it. This is what stands out in my mind.
Mm. Mm.
They used to play tennis with them
Oh my God.
on the landing, where they would get books and bash them in between each other. Now, at that point, I remember thinking, I have no idea what he's talking about. I've just
Yeah.
seen
Oh
another one.
yeah, another one. Yeah.
And my brother said that he was experiencing the same in his bedroom. Now, my mum's house has always had a very odd feel about it. It comes and goes. I do think that those particular lights were connected with possibly spirits that were connected with the road. The road historically is very, very old and was a driveway, a long driveway up to an abbey. So there's
Mm.
lots of stories about monks, you know, religious
Mm.
people, etc., that are attached to that road. So yeah, that was my first real encounter of the word orb, and
Mm.
my first real kind of encounter of people talking about it. So that was quite young. I think I was probably about 12 when that conversation happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that I I heard about when I was growing up. It's only sort of in the last, I suppose, maybe 15, 20 years. But as I've got more into paranormal shows, I suppose, that I've seen it spoken about. And so that's interesting that it was on connected to an abbey. So it might have been on a ley line or something.
I'm not sure. I mean,
Mm,
there was always speculation. There was always ghost stories when I was growing up, and
mm,
one of the ghost stories that was attached to that particular road was there was a very large property on that road, and it was probably, I think it's about 6 houses down from my mum's house. And the ghost story that's attached with that property is that there had been monks caught having relations, shall we say, with nuns, and they were taken to that site where that property is, and that's where they were shamefully hung in publicly. I haven't done any digging into the truth of that, and I'm sure, you know, I'm sure that wouldn't be particularly hard to dig into and have a look at. It possibly is a ley line, a meridian. I genuinely don't know. It's the whole road has a very strange feeling. That particular property, my old dog, after nightfall, I would get literally to their boundary line, and she wouldn't pass it. I had to cross over the road to go past that property. So, you know, whether that was her picking up on, you know, on me psychologically, or whether that was something she was picking up about the property, I'm not quite sure. But yeah, definitely something very odd.
Yeah, dogs, I mean, all animals are very sensitive to these things, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely.
So I've got another guest that I've interviewed who's got little chihuahuas, and she's photographed colourful lights in her garden, and her dog's actually looking at them
Yeah.
as she's photographing them. So it's not like lens flare or anything, because the dog is seeing it. And actually she's got pictures of the dogs like trying to dig up like rainbow light on the grass.
Wow.
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
I know. I saw that one come out of my
yeah,
mouth.
yeah.
That was a wow moment, and off it went.
You've obviously got something energetically about you
I,
that's
I,
attracting the orbs.
I think it's because it's a subject. I think that this is other. I think that this energy around is other. I don't think it's the spirits of the dead in terms of paranormal. I think, um, and the ones that are kind of buzzing about that I can't see with my eyes, I can discount on a you know, on a skeptical level. The ones that I actually see with my eyes, those I can't discount. And I actually think that this is the other. I think this is more fairy, more fae. And it's
Yes.
because I do a lot of talk, a lot of talking about them, especially on Zoom meetings, and around and about at different conferences. And I tend to find that I think they're nosy, and I think they're checking up. I think they're checking up on. I'm not giving any secrets away. You know, I'm
Yeah.
talking with respect, and I get that kind of feeling that usually when I get to some more in-depth parts of talking about fairies, or if I'm interviewing a guest and they become more in depth about it, that seems to be when things kick off and go. I actually saw that one go down. That's when things get really busy, and
Yeah.
they tend to shut us down technologically. They go, no, that's it, we're booting you off.
Yeah, I'm interested in the conditions that attract them. It's the only time I've seen, like, I have seen them with my eyes here, but the clearest, sort of longest one I've seen, that's another one that's just come by, was in a very old house in North Devon, in an old cottage I was staying in. And I was coming down the stairs one morning, and I just, I had this beautiful old garden at the back, very old, sort of very wild garden. And I knew that what I saw, this orb, which was white and gold, very bright, and it was only for a few seconds,
Mhm.
just drifted by. It wasn't a flash or anything, so I know that it was moving quickly. Yeah, I knew that wasn't a trick of the light or anything that I'd seen.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
An orb.
It's amazing. I mean, the ones that I've had two outsides, that two experiences outside. One I thought was completely normal. Again, probably 13 or 14 years old. There's a cemetery in the forest, so our local churchyard became too full, and they then started burying people from the village in a lovely cemetery on the edge of the woods. And usually, I mean, it was summer, when I was seeing these things, and you would walk by, and I would get a glimpse of, and they were probably about the size of grapefruit. They were quite big, light, balls of light, and they ranged from sort of oranges through to whites and yellows, and they would just sort of float up from the ground and then just poof, and they were off. Now, me being me, I didn't think that there was anything bizarre about this. In my mind, I'd equated it to almost like a marsh gas theory, that the bodies were putting out gases, and because it was summer, that they were being ignited somehow. So I clarified it as a natural phenomena within my head, and it wasn't until years later that there was and I was an older teenager. We were sat in the car park nearby that cemetery. And there was a group of us in a car, and I was telling them about it and saying, I wonder whether we're going to see the lights, something very, very normal to me. And I looked around, and they were terrified. And they were just, they just couldn't comprehend, and I was like, no, it's fine. This is a natural phenomena, but, nobody can prove or disprove the marshlight theory, or, whether it is a natural phenomena or unnatural phenomena. Bizarrely enough, skip forward to about 10 years ago, so well out my teens by then. I was walking through the same woodland. It was the summer, but it was a very dull day. It wasn't what I'd class as an orb, but may have some explanation to what orbs are. I saw. I looked to my. That it was my left as I was walking up a path, and I saw what I can only describe as it looked like a dragonfly that was upright, that was horizontal, bright white, and emitting bright white wings. Sort of energy. So it was that classic fairy sighting where people think fairies have wings. And it kind of just, it was there. It was like suspended. And I remember thinking, oh, that's a fairy. And then thinking, what? And looking away and looking again, and it was still there. And I watched as it kind of sort of zipped out, like, the old-fashioned tellies, like when you're turning on the old-fashioned tellies, you get that zip kind of motion that goes off. Now, one thought that I had around orbs is it beings that are sort of trapped in between the layers of our density and their vibrational level, and they are just emitting a vibrational light at that point? Is it them coming through? Is it them coming in or out of and that light is kind of that energy, that point of energy of manifestation, or going back into their realm. So
and that makes sense to me, especially as these lights are seen by people in very liminal, what we term as liminal places. And usually sort of very untouched places, or places with lots of ley lines, or they're surrounded by nature. Or like you say, graveyards.
I mean, a graveyard is the ultimate liminal place, isn't it? Because nobody stays, and do the dead come and go from a graveyard? Humans come and go from a graveyard. They're very, very quiet, very still places. Often, on a side note, I'll go into graveyards just to get some peace and quiet if I'm in a town or a city. And there is just such a different feeling. You know, you go from hustle and bustle into these pockets of sort of tranquility with, you know, birds and wildlife. And so they are a very liminal space, aren't they? Very charged.
And I mean, there's even graveyards that they're planting wildflowers in now, aren't they,
Yes.
for bees. And so, yeah, they are really sort of treasure these little areas to treasure, aren't they, in our cities and urban landscapes.
Yeah.
As well as being wonderful places, just like you say, just have some peace and connect with the other realms, which
Definitely.
we don't get much chance to do these days, do we, in our busy lives? So,
No.
um, else was I going to say? Something else came to me then, but I was going to go back to what you were saying about the playing tennis with the orbs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you so was that the history that was connected to the abbey, or I mean, do you know anything about whether these balls of lights had any sort of density to them to be able to play tennis with them? They must have been, you know, had some density to them.
Yeah, I think
Um,
in my mind, I don't know whether I equated it from the conversation or whether
mm,
it was actually spoken about. But the image that I was given from that conversation, I'm a very, very visual person.
mm,
The 1980s tabletop stress toys that you had, and they were like chinking.
yeah,
Something cradle, isn't it? I can't remember what the word
I
is.
know. Yeah.
Yeah, where you,
Mm,
you 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 release one ball and it kind of does that swinging motion. So
mm,
in my mind, I had that kind of. It was almost like they projected that force before the
mm.
force actually hit the orb, and it was almost
Oh yeah, yeah.
like a
Mm,
projection of
mm,
they. You know, it wasn't. I wouldn't have thought that they felt the orb actually make contact.
mm, mm-hmm,
But I don't know whether that's how I've kind of manifested that conversation years down the line as an adult, trying to put some sense to it. But the way he described it, and I've never heard it been described like this since, is
mm,
that they were very solid. And almost bubble-like, that they had a sentient quality, that they kind of were individual and moved individually and had individual colours.
mm,
I did interview a lady about a year and a half ago who'd had an experience. It's on my YouTube channel, where she had experienced. I think if I remember rightly, she actually went inside this orb, but it was like glitter, like holographic glitter. That
oh man, wow, I'd love to see that. I'd love to watch that.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
have to watch it back, because
Mm,
she was one of the very first people that I interviewed about it happened to me. You know, it was that
mm,
kind of series that I was doing, and I was expecting, you know, the general ghost tales, which I love. I love people, you know,
mm,
chatting to people about paranormal experiences, and she was the first guest, and I don't know what they're going to talk about. I just asked people to come on, and I was blown away, you know, that the very
mm,
first one was this. And it's a very emotive subject within the paranormal community, because it's very much displaced as mythology, that there is, you know, such thing as an orb. Um,
mm,
with the advent of people having cameras on the phone and being able to photograph everything and record everything, a lot of people are capturing what they think are orbs and actually have um, very mundane explanations. I mean, one of my favourites, when I watch a lot of paranormal snippets of shows and
yeah.
things, and I suppose one of my favourites, but one of the ones that kind of does rock the paranormal community, is when somebody's got a CCTV camera that's fixed outside,
Mm,
and they are saying, "Oh, look, there's a ghost walking across the lawn," and it's quite obviously a spider's web that's kind of, you know,
yeah.
capturing the light or flickering, or if somebody came to me and said, I've captured this, I saw it with my own eyes, and I would be more inclined to believe that they'd had that experience. But the majority of people who do show me photographs or video snippets, I ask them, did you see it? And often it's, no, I didn't, not until I reviewed the footage. So
yeah, that's the difficult thing, isn't it? Capturing something that you see with your eyes, when it just, I mean, obviously we've got lots going on around you at the moment, but if you go specifically somewhere to photograph something, the likelihood of seeing it and photographing it at the same time, it's very slim, isn't it?
very slim, very slim. I mean, unless it's a place that's notorious for orb activity and people are actually physically seeing them. It seems to have fallen out of popularity with people who have haunting experiences to say that that's what they've been seeing. I don't know. I suppose it's because of how the paranormal world now responds to the word orb, and I don't blame them. There's that whole joke of suffering with orbs in your house. Get some pledge out and do some dusting. That's one of the big jokes that go around, and I'm totally in that camp. And if I didn't have, like I say, if I didn't see this stuff in front of me with my own eyes, then I'd just be like, nah, she needs to dust the house.
How long has this been happening with the orbs?
So I started the YouTube channel about just coming up 2.5 years ago, right at the very beginning of lockdown. And from the get-go, the very first interview that I did, I was having technological trouble. Now, I am not tech savvy at all. I'm really not tech savvy. I'm not brilliant with computers, but it then just became a running joke, and every guest from there on in, I'd say, expect it when you're just in mid-flow talking about something that's incredibly important, that the internet will go down, or you'll lose sound, or it'll freeze or whatever. And even on the highest streaming bands with Wi-Fi that I could possibly get, I was still getting issues, and other people were getting bizarre issues.
Oh no, that's a fly. That was a fly.
thought I'd passed one over.
We've got 10 minutes left.
That's going quick.
Yeah, I know.
So
yeah.
So it was probably about 6 months in. Oh, I saw that one then. It was probably about 6 months in, and not only had I been getting things, people saying you've got things around you, but I'd also had EVPs occurring as well, and people electronic voice phenomena. And I was being interviewed for another podcast, and we're actually talking about the demonic side of Fae, and the kind of connections between the darker side and what that meant, and as a paranormal investigator, what that means. And the person who was interviewing me, I could actually hear it through my earphones, but he stopped me and he said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah." And it was this low grumble, and it occurred quite a few times, and people had said from there on in about who'd watched it and said, there was something. So I think when you're talking about these subjects on a regular basis, you are going to get those other energies that will prick their ears up and go, hold on, that's us you're talking about. We're going to make sure that that we're around.
Yeah. So it's when you get evidence like that, where you get the voice and the light, it's almost, it sort of strengthens the evidence for what you're getting, doesn't it? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be interesting to do an experiment to see if I could actually get sort of orbs on cue, you know, sort of.
Yes, because I was just thinking we haven't got much time with this session, but unless you wanted to go on, or shall we?
I don't mind.
Yeah, because I've got with me my musical instrument. I've got
Ooh.
my drum, so I thought I could play to your orbs and see if they react to it.
Oh, I think that's it. Oh, yeah, that's a definite.
Wow, that's amazing. So I don't know how much time we've got left, but okay, I'm just going to play.
Mm-hmm.
Can you hear that?
Yeah. Now that's bizarre. The sound's totally gone. I heard the
Yeah,
first bit and then it totally went.
it went.
Yeah,
Oh my
nothing.
gosh. I'll move it a bit closer.
First note and then nothing.
How strange.
That is bizarre.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
That is weird.
Yeah, but a similar thing happened to me when I was interviewing somebody about orbs, and she was just about to talk about fairies,
Mm-hmm.
a message from the fairies, and the video cut out.
Yeah.
It just totally went. It was like, oh, you're going to tell us something that we don't want to tell you, and
Yeah.
so we had to start again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's bizarre. That's
yeah.
bizarre. Oh, hold on.
Oh,
Yeah.
ooh. So, is there anything? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Bit out of sync for some reason.
Oh.
Strange. Yeah. Um, is there anything else that you'd like to share about orbs and orb experiences that you've had?
I did go. I had the classic very early in the very early days, just to give you a contrast of orbs, why they have such a bad reputation within the paranormal. But I went many years ago to Coventry Guildhall, which was a very haunted location, one of the very first big locations that I ever went to. And let me tell you, I was petrified, absolutely petrified. And at the time, I'd got yeah, we've just had one. At the time, I'd got a new camera, so I was very
Oh,
very
wow.
very snap happy.
Yeah.
That was a crazy one.
Yeah.
I was very snap happy with my camera, and it was something that became a bit of a lucky charm, not a lucky charm, but a protective charm. There's something about holding a camera when you're in a haunted location that just makes me feel a bit more brave about being there.
Mm.
And I'd been snapping away with this camera, and there was one particular room, the big dining hall, that I'd been taking photographs up of the balcony. Now, I was viewing them as I was taking them, and I was super excited because these photographs were full of orbs, full of
Yeah.
orbs.
Yeah.
So I went over to other paranormal investigators, say, "Look, it's full of orbs! It's full of orbs!" And it's like, that's not orbs. And actually, when you zoom in onto
Yeah.
photos, when you do think that you've got orb photos, you can there's very distinct patterns that occur within water droplets or within dust droplets. And this particular room was incredibly dusty, and we were all sort of shuffling around and kicking up a lot of old and ancient dust. But I remember being very crestfallen. And from there on in, I learned to use the phrase with people when they show me their orb photos. I don't debunk people, because who's 100% sure, because I don't think anybody can be.
Mm.
But the other thing is, I know from the receiving end how bad I felt when somebody said, no, it's dust. So I'll say, that's very interesting. You know, you should maybe go away and have a look at what orbs are and what orbs aren't. The other thing that came through from researching around orbs many years ago was many people experience them in a variety of colours. So,
oh yes, yeah.
and all these colours people have correlated to different energies. So where you have your reds, you have your more malevolent side of things, or of black orbs are particularly bad, or blue orbs are, you know, melancholy or depressive state. And people do say that when they have experiences with these orbs, that they have either felt in that state or that state has come to them when they've encountered those orbs. And I find that fascinating, that colour theory and a psychological colour theory then links on to people's experiences.
Yeah, which makes me think that maybe it is like an energetic thing that's coming from us, from our energy system.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you know anybody who is equipped at reading auras, people's auras, these kind of flashes and pockets and bubbles of energy do emit from us as humans. You know, if you chat to people who can do that, and I've on the odd occasion. I don't do it very often, but I've on the odd occasion sort of zoned out and tuned into somebody's energetic body, and I've actually seen that when they've had particular thoughts that they then project emotionally, and you can see these almost bubbles coming from them.
I've experienced that talking with a close friend of mine who came to stay with me a few months ago, and we were talking, and I was talking about fairies, and I think I was talking about fairies to her, and this little blue orb just shot out the side of my head. And then she got excited talking about it, and I saw a little orb come out of the side of her head. So it was almost like we were having this energetic connection.
Yes.
Talking about orbs. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy, isn't it? It is crazy. So whether these things are things that we manifest, whether it is because you had that connection with another human being, whether we can have that connection with other beings from other dimensions without even knowing it, and we actually inadvertently create orbs because we have a connection with other beings in that instance. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just a manifestation of our energy and other beings' energy that bring these things into, and maybe they're not sentient as so much as they are energy from us. That's a really nice theory.
Yeah, but I'd never seen Tinkerbell type fairies, or like you were describing, the little white winged fairies, until I had this really clear vision, and it was in this sort of falling off to sleep state. Oh, there's one.
Yes, I know.
Just as I'm talking about it, and I was drifting off to sleep one night, and I had just one of these really clear, one of those sort of visionary experiences where you've got your eyes closed, but it's almost like it's right in front of your eyes. Image of all these little white winged fairies, and it was just light. They were just light, couldn't see any features, just little white beings with wings. And up until that point, I dismissed that type of fairy because I thought, oh no, they're sort of all solid and they're part of nature and they look like this and they don't look all pretty. And then I had that sort of visionary experience, and I was like, oh wow, maybe there are different types of fairy. Maybe there are fairies like that. So, but that was in a dream state.
Yeah, I think that though the wings perfectly hit the nail on the head for me when I had that encounter, was because I've never really truly believed that they have butterfly wings or bird wings, or the wings it was almost like the heart center was emitting that much light that it fanned out into light around them.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
almost got the feeling that it hadn't transpired enough into our realm to be anything other than its pure energy, you know. So how it would then come through for our perception is anybody's guess, you know. It's maybe that's their true body, maybe their light body before they manifest into a material realm. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. And I know other people that have seen fairies psychically, just have seen them as light forms
Yes.
as well, just as little, humanoid shapes.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that one's going for it.
Whoa. Oh, wow.
Sorry, it's so distracting.
I'm just distracted by these.
Oh, another one. I'm going to put my hands here, by the way, because people are going to be thinking I'm throwing glitter around or something. You know, I'm seriously not. And there's nobody else about to be like sprinkling things.
They're loving it, aren't they? They're really like, as we were talking about those light forms of fairies, that's when they're starting to show up.
Yeah.
More.
Oh, that was a really good one.
Oh, I missed that one. Because I'm looking at you, I'm looking at this way, so I'm looking at you, see what I mean? But I keep sort of looking that way to look at you on the screen.
Yeah, I know.
I keep seeing you, seeing these lights. Wow. Oh, thank you. Thank you, fairies. Yeah.
They've enjoyed this one, it seems. They've been quite bright on this one.
They have, haven't they? They've been really joyful. It'd be wonderful to be able to like slow this video down.
Yeah.
And see the actual shapes.
Yes, and the trajectories, because they sometimes will sort of do loops, or you know, they don't just sort of flutter around. They will do different things. They've gone again.
It's like they're showing off, isn't it? It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. It's just amazing. Yeah.
It's because it's absolutely become the norm. I mean, there was quite one went up there. It's become the norm to the point where people mention it, you know, when I'm interviewing them, and after the interview, they'll say, "Oh, you know, there was something moving behind." And that's the other thing. I'll sometimes get not shadow figures as in dark, malevolent shadow figures, but I'll get sort of shadowy things sort of move in the background, which I'm just like, yeah, no. I know it happens. So I don't think you can be involved and invested in this kind of thing without expecting. I mean, it always freaks me out when you know, I work alongside a lot of paranormal investigators, and how shocked they are when they have paranormal activity occur in their house.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you expect that not to happen when you open yourself up and you're asking for communication, you're asking for evidence, and then you go home and you try and get some sleep, and you know, and some spook comes along and says, "Well, here I am," you know, and then they don't like it. They don't like it. It's the same with the fairies. I think you can't be invested in them without them, you know, being invested in you back.
Yeah. And I think once you're on the path with them, because every now and again we get caught up in obviously the pressures of human life, don't we?
Yes.
But
Yeah.
there's something about the fairies that they keep calling you back. It's like, okay, you've had that time now. You've had enough time feeling sorry for yourself. We're still here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's happened so many times where I've, somebody's given me a book about fairies or a little fairy trinket or something, and I'd be like, "Oh yes, fairies."
Yeah, you are there.
Yeah.
I do think though that there are people like yourself that you know, I see a whole bunch of people who are advocates that who are drawn in by the fae to be advocates on this plane for them, and
Yeah.
and I think they do allow us, our human existence, but to a point where if we do forget, we do have that kick up the rump about, come on, you're meant to be doing some work for us on this plane as well. And I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen it throughout my whole life. I'll have periods of years where it's not, I don't have a great involvement. And when I started the paranormal thinking that the Fae were very, very separate. And actually they aren't for me. I've probably become more of an advocate now, and an ambassador for the Fae realm than I ever have been, because I've encountered them more. I've encountered them much more.
Yes, and you shared, I don't know if we can talk about it. You were talking about the pixie in the that's captured on film in
Yes.
on a TV show that you were called in to talk about, which I was just like amazing when I saw that. I was like, wow, they
Yeah.
captured a pixie on film.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
was I was talking about that on the weekend. I was chatting at a paranormal convention, and
yeah.
it was an amazing sequence of events that went. Do you want me to talk about this?
Yeah, if you're allowed
Yeah,
to. I didn't know
of
if you're
course I
allowed to
am. Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I work with Barry Guy is my lead investigator in the Ghost Hunter Paranormal Society, and we run events as well as do private investigations as a group. And he's on a TV program called Help My House is Haunted, which has actually become a real keystone in changing people's perceptions on what is hauntings and what aren't, and
Yeah. Yeah.
also the involvement of fairies within that. And I got a phone call from him one afternoon saying, Kate, I'm on set, we're at somebody's house, we've got something going on, I need your help. And I stopped him and said, I don't give me any details. I don't want to be polluted if you're going to ask me to help out with this. And I said to him, please just send me a photograph of the front door. He knows I do remote viewing, so I will meditate and psychically remote view buildings usually. He sent me that photograph, and I was in a meditation for probably about an hour and a half all in all. But literally, as soon as I went through that front door psychically, I encountered this being, and it was very early days when the Fae were showing me themselves in haunted properties. So I still at that stage found it very strange and quite comical. But this little being was probably just under a meter tall, maybe a little less. He was jumping up and down and sort of stomping up and down and very, very irate. And he was flicking in between sort of being spiky and more humanoid and spiky and more humanoid. I got him to calm down, and he eventually told me, because I couldn't understand what he was saying. Now the key is he sounded foreign. That's because later it transpired he was from France.
Right.
That's another
Yeah.
side of it. And he'd
Yeah.
followed this family to Devon. But he was saying that they chopped down his favourite tree. It was his tree. And they chopped the tree down because they didn't like it where it was. He was saying there was nothing wrong with the tree. The tree was healthy, and it was an apple tree that they'd chopped down. And he was particularly fond, he had a friendship with this tree. And as it transpired, I said all this to Barry and said, I'm going to sound mad, but this is what I've got. And he said, I'm going to go and talk to the family. And he came back and he went, yeah, Kate, they did. That this is what's happened. And he had a psychic on the program, Chris Fleming, who is a lovely guy. He is a lovely guy and has become a fairy ambassador himself.
Oh, brilliant.
He has
Yeah.
a subsequent entourage around him. His journey's been fascinating. But he had drawn a psychic impression of the being that he'd picked up on that day before he'd heard my story. Barry also drew a picture of what he had seen, and the two were the two shape-shifting images of the humanoid and the spiky creature. So I think Chris had drawn this sort of spiky creature, and
Right.
Barry had drawn the humanoid but both of them were the same being. It was just
Mm.
showing its annoyance. But that
Wow.
particular show has been absolutely pivotal in changing people's perceptions of what fairy is. And
Mm.
because this thing was causing havoc, it was scratching, it was banging doors, it was moving objects. It was seriously angry about
Yeah.
what had happened with just cause.
Yeah. And it fascinates me because I'm writing about the pixies, and there's all those old tales about the havoc they wreaked in households
Yeah, yeah,
if you
yeah,
didn't keep them happy.
yeah,
So it's very interesting to come up to the modern day and have that evidence captured
yeah,
on a modern day TV show.
yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah. Um, Gosh, I've lost my thread again now.
Yeah, me
It
too.
went to
I
Pixieland.
know.
Oh, there's so well. I wonder how much time we've got left. I keep getting distracted by the time. But there's one thing I just wanted to mention, talking about going back to EVPs
Yes.
and taking things home with you.
Hmm.
So I did a recording with Joe Hickey Hall
Hmm. Lovely,
um,
Joe.
of the modern fairy sightings. Yeah,
Hmm.
back in April for my podcast. And whilst we were talking at this very old barn on Dartmoor, um, when I was listening back, I'd recorded a woman humming
Hmm.
behind us. Um, and I've actually released that online now. But the thing is, I'd heard this woman singing at
Hmm.
home since about my birthday. Just every now and again, I'd hear this woman singing, like when I woke up in the night, or sometimes before I went to sleep, and my cat would react as well.
Hmm.
She seemed to be, well, actually, the one time I was with my cat and I heard it, my cat was purring louder and louder and louder. It's almost like it wasn't scary. I wasn't
Mm.
scared by it. I was just intrigued and it felt comforting. Um, so yeah, I'd heard her for those few months, and then another time when I was with another friend recording another episode up on Dartmoor, this friend played her flute, Native American flute, and then I heard this woman singing back afterwards
Hmm.
after she played the flute. So it's amazing then to meet with Joe, talking about fairies and magical things, and I capture this woman humming or she was singing a wordless song behind us.
Mm.
And I was like, I can't believe I thought I was going mad, as you do,
Hmm.
hearing this woman singing.
Yeah.
And now I've captured her on EVP. But the strange thing was, I haven't heard her since about summer solstice. So I heard her from like
Uh,
my birthday
hmm.
to summer solstice.
Hmm.
And I haven't heard her again recently, I could think of. So yeah, it's a very strange thing.
Did you ever try and communicate with her over EVP? Did you ever try asking her who she was, or?
Um, I haven't done that from home. I went back to the barn
Hmm.
and I spoke to one side of the barn feels a bit more unfriendly than the
Hmm.
other. And I spoke to the spirits on the one side and tried to communicate with this woman. I got lots of knocking in reply to my questions that I've recorded.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so it was lots of tapping and knocking in response.
So
Mm.
before you went to the barn, had you sensed her presence then? Had you heard her before you went to the barn?
Oh, sorry, I don't know what's happened there. Um, I didn't know. Well, the thing was, the other thing that happened when Joe and I were on Dartmoor before we got to the barn,
Hmm.
this passerby that I knew went by while
Hmm.
Joe and I were sat on this rock, as you do, and he said, I can smell perfume. He could smell
Oh.
really strong perfume. Neither Joe or I were wearing perfume.
Mm-hmm.
He said it's like a lady's perfume. So I wonder whether it's the presence of that woman following us or with us.
Mm. So
I
did
don't know.
before you do you think that you encountered her first at the barn, or do you think that
No,
no, it's before then?
I think it's the same woman that I'd heard like at home
Mm-hmm.
from about my birthday, early hours, around the time of my birthday in January.
Mm.
Um, and then quite regularly, not all
Yeah,
the time, but every now and again when I wasn't expecting it up until I recorded her.
that's fascinating. And it isn't it
Yeah,
it's amazing when when you can play something back and go, I heard that. This is what I've
yeah,
been hearing.
yeah, it was. It was like, well, I haven't been hearing things. It's,
Mm.
need to
I'm not mad.
trust. I'm not
Yeah,
mad.
yeah.
She is actually around, yeah. So no, I'd like to find out who she is. But yeah.
Have you got any idea? I mean, do you feel like she's a relative? Do you feel like she's something more ancient? Do you feel like she was human, or what are your impressions?
Part of me sort of wonders, right, is she like a relative of mine, like a grandmother or something? Just
Hmm.
another.
Yeah.
Or another somebody else I spoke to suggested, is it a mermaid?
Oh.
And I thought back because I've had experiences of hearing singing when I've been on the coast
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
a couple of
yeah.
years ago and singing to that singing and having singing coming back to me. I'm going to do
Hmm.
an episode about mermaids. And I thought well, maybe I've made some connection there with, spirit, sea spirit,
Mm.
and that's who it is, or it could be just somebody else that's communicating with me through song. I don't know.
Yeah. I
Mm.
mean, I mean, what was the kind of melody like? Was it sorrowful, or was it joyous, or
It wasn't joyous and it wasn't sorrowful. It's sort of just gentle, kind of, sort of song that you'd sing if you were, um, just working or,
yeah,
um, just sort of not celebrating something, but just sort of, sort of in a mindful sort of way, just humming to yourself,
hmm.
a little tune.
I mean, I've definitely got I won't tell you, but I'll
Mm,
write it down. I've definitely got an impression of a woman from what you've been telling me, and I know
mm,
that when you originally, I think you messaged me about the barn and about the
yeah,
EVP that you'd caught. My first reaction to that was, you don't want to be in that barn. There's something really bad in that barn. That was my
yeah,
first impression, and maybe she was around to keep you safe from whatever was in there. There
yes.
was something really dark in the rafters. I picked up something very big, very dark in the rafters.
Yeah, there is because they I can't go in one side of the barn. There's like
Yeah,
an invisible force field, and I've even approaching that side of the barn, I feel like there's a big no,
yeah,
that
yeah.
sort of dark energy.
Very dark energy. So
Um,
maybe she was
mm,
around to protect you from that, and
mm,
to keep you safe, and to comfort you from that. But I will jot down the image, the impression that I have of her. It'd
yeah,
be interesting to see if maybe have an ask out to see if anybody is a psychic seer, to see if they pick up a similar image.
okay, yeah. I mean, I've got very strongly at the moment my grandmother in my head, but um, yeah, my dad's mum. Yeah, that's who I sort of see at the moment.
Do you want me to tell you a
Yeah,
little bit of
yeah.
what I'm getting?
Okay, yeah.
I'm getting a
Mm,
skirt that's very waist high, just maybe just under bust. And it kind of billows out. It's very not peasant, but very work orientated skirt and shirt tucked in with an apron, and not a large lady, but a fuller lady. Yeah, and a strong lady, physically strong lady.
What's that sound?
Oh, it's my partner downstairs playing with the dog.
Right.
Yeah, it's nothing spooky. He's chucking the ball about and getting her excited. So
yeah, so that could be either one of my grandmothers, because I see them both wearing an apron, and
yeah,
both quite sort of stocky, strong ladies.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you the recording from the barn that I did
please
for
do.
EVPs.
Yeah.
Anyway, lovely talking to you, Kate. It's
You
been
too.
amazing. It's been so interesting. Thank you
Oh.
so much for your time.
That was one saying, bye, I'm off.
Bye. Yeah, thank you to the fairies, and yeah, it's been fabulous.
It's been lovely. Thank you so much for having me on and chatting with me. All right.
Bye, Kate.
Bye.
Take
See you
care.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.